Simon Cowell, once the most feared and influential figure in modern entertainment, is now living a reality more fragile than anyone could have predicted. At 65, his empire has faded, his body has been broken by near-fatal accidents, and the fame that once defined him has slipped away. For decades, he was television's kingmaker, the sharp-tongued judge who built stars overnight and crushed dreams just as quickly. But behind the smirk and the cutting words lies the story of a man brought to his knees by life itself. Simon Philip Cowell was born on October 7, 1959, in Lambeth, London. His father Eric worked as an executive at EMI Music Publishing, while his mother Julie was a ballet dancer and socialite. Simon grew up restless, rebellious, and uninterested in school. He clashed with authority, dropped out, and struggled to find direction. Odd jobs came and went until he landed a mailroom position at EMI, the company where his father had influence. Starting at the bottom, Simon absorbed everything about the industry: the deals, the egos, the way stars were created and destroyed. He wasn't content to shuffle papers. He studied how records were marketed and vowed to control that process himself one day. Early ventures often failed. At one point, after a collapse in business, he was forced to move back in with his parents, broke and humiliated. But instead of quitting, he sharpened his hunger for success. By the early 1990s, he had built a reputation for spotting talent that others overlooked, and for understanding what ordinary people wanted to hear. His first big wins came from unexpected acts, novelty groups like Robson and Jerome, and even the Power Rangers soundtrack. These successes proved that Simon could turn unlikely performers into chart sensations. But he knew his real breakthrough wouldn't come from music alone. It would come from television. In 2001, Simon became a judge on the UK's Pop Idol. His brutal honesty, often humiliating contestants, shocked audiences. Some hated him, but millions tuned in just to hear what he would say next. When the format crossed over to America as American Idol, Simon became a household name. His scowl, his blunt critiques, and his reputation for being unfiltered turned him into a cultural phenomenon. He wasn't just a judge, he was the face of the show. Careers like Kelly Clarkson and Carrie Underwood began under his watch, cementing him as the ultimate gatekeeper of modern pop. The money followed quickly. His company Psycho partnered with major labels, and his brand expanded. He created The X Factor and Got Talent, franchises that spread worldwide, bringing stars like One Direction, Leona Lewis, and Susan Boyle to global audiences. At his peak, Simon Cowell was one of the highest-paid men in entertainment, earning tens of millions each year. But even then, cracks began to show. Critics accused him of exploiting contestants, of prioritizing drama and humiliation over artistry. What once felt refreshing started to look cruel. Still, the empire grew. By the late 2000s, he was everywhere: television, tabloids, record charts. But the higher the rise, the harder the eventual fall. The 2010s marked the beginning of decline. In 2010, Simon left American Idol to launch The X Factor USA. Hopes were high, but after 3 seasons, it was cancelled. In the UK, The X Factor began to falter too, losing cultural relevance as audiences turned to new formats and streaming platforms. Critics said the show had become formulaic, more about spectacle than music. Contestants later spoke out, claiming manipulation and emotional exploitation behind the scenes. Even Britain's Got Talent, once his strongest brand, faced backlash for manufactured drama and recycled gimmicks. Meanwhile, streaming platforms like YouTube and Netflix created new paths to fame, bypassing Simon's gatekeeping. For the first time, his golden touch looked tarnished. But Simon's biggest struggles weren't in television. They were in his personal life and health. In 2017, he fainted due to low blood pressure, a warning about his lifestyle. Then, in August 2020, disaster struck. Testing a high-powered electric bike at his Malibu home, Simon lost control and crashed, shattering his back in multiple places. He underwent emergency surgery with a metal rod inserted into his spine. For months, he faced the terrifying possibility that he might never walk again. The once untouchable figure was now dependent on others just to stand. He admitted privately how close he came to being paralyzed for life. Just as he began to recover, tragedy hit again. In 2022, another e-bike crash in London left him with a broken arm and concussion. Friends said he was shaken, forced to confront his own mortality. The man who had once strutted across stages in control of everything was now haunted by the fragility of his own body. In the middle of all this came Fatherhood, which revealed a softer side few expected. In 2014, his partner Lauren Silverman gave birth to their son, Eric. For the first time, Simon admitted publicly that life meant more than ratings and contracts. He called Eric his greatest achievement and embraced fatherhood with surprising warmth. But there was regret too. Simon confessed that he wished he had started a family earlier. Decades of chasing power had cost him years he could never get back. The accidents deepened this reflection. He feared his health might rob Eric of a father too soon. Meanwhile, his empire crumbled piece by piece. In 2018, the X Factor UK ended after years of dwindling viewership. America's Got Talent remained, but without the cultural weight it once carried. Former contestants came forward with painful stories of exploitation, mental health struggles, and contracts they said left them broken. Simon was no longer seen as the genius kingmaker, but as the villain of a fading format. Financially, he remained wealthy, but the power that defined him slipped away. For a man who built his life on control, the loss of relevance was devastating. By the mid-2020s, Simon Cowell was no longer the most important man on television, but a reminder of an era that had passed. At 65, Simon's story is one of sharp contrasts. He created global franchises, gave the world stars like Kelly Clarkson, Carrie Underwood, One Direction, and Susan Boyle, and redefined modern talent shows. His influence on pop culture is undeniable. But his legacy is also marked by cruelty, exploitation, declining shows, and personal tragedy. The health scares changed him permanently. After breaking his back in 2020, he admitted that lying in a hospital bed unsure if he would walk again forced him to rethink his life. He now spends more time with his son and family, cherishing what he once sacrificed for ambition. But even with this new perspective, the truth is clear. His empire has faded. His dominance is gone, and the narrative of his life is no longer in his control. Simon Cowell's story is not just one of rise and fall. It is a reminder of how quickly fortune changes. He was once the judge who ruled television, but today he stands as proof that wealth and fame cannot shield anyone from regret, time, or tragedy. The man who judged everyone else so harshly has now been judged by life itself.